This is Husker Online, your authority on Nebraska athletics. In this weekly show, the Husker Online team will give you the latest insight on Husker football, basketball, baseball, and of course, recruiting. Now, here's your host, Husker Online publisher, Sean Callahan.
Hello here and welcome again to another edition of the Husker Online Show. Sean Callahan, Steve Sipple, Robin Washett, as we are making our way through the month of January now, and it's official. Coaches go on the road Friday to begin recruiting. They can start going into high schools. They can do in-home visits still with 2023 prospects if there's some that are out there. But in wake of that, Nebraska has made the announcement of their final 3 coaching hires. None of them are surprises. In fact, we knew all 3. Bob Wager is now the tight ends coach from Arlington Martin High School. Garrett McGuire is the receivers coach. And then Rob Dvorak is the linebackers coach. Both Dvorak and McGuire come from the Carolina Panthers. Nothing really big there except that jumps out because we knew all this, but it was more the logistics. I'm now more intrigued on the salary numbers and kind of what a $7 million pool looks like. When you kind of look at the staff itself, there aren't a lot of guys on this staff that have commanded big money as coaches in their career.
No, they really haven't. Now, it is backing up a little bit. I mean, the news is that the staff's finalized.
All
the final
10.
3 are finalized. So a lot of people wondered about that. Why isn't it finalized? Well, it's finalized. As far as the salaries go, it's kind of interesting. I mean, a big talking point when Matt Rule was hired, I think it was November 27th, one of the big talking points was Trev Alberts, Nebraska AD, saying they have a $7 million salary pool, so that naturally people kind of went to the fantasy. It's like that
building the all-star band.
Yeah, and I don't think Matt Rule ever had that in mind.
Will he spend all $7 million?
Well, I mean, I think you would. I think you would. It means some guys are going to be making a lot more money than they've ever made, which is fine. It's a tough job.
Like, what do you pay Garrett McGuire, Robin? If you're hiring a 23-year-old, first-year, full position coach,
$250,000,
$250,000. I mean, that's about what Barrett Brute made on his first job.
He's a full-time Power 5 position coach. I mean, that's pretty standard money right there. And say what you want about his qualifications. I mean, this is the head coach hire, so they're going to pay him accordingly. So in that $7 million, is that just for the full-time assistants?
And the strength coach. And I know this has gone back and forth. Yeah. There's a lot of passionate people on Husker Online that have debated because the contract does say the 10 assistant coaches, but the University of Nebraska confirmed to me the strength coach is in that $7 million pool as well. So you're looking at like $630,000 in change per hire on average.
So this like extended support staff?
Just the head strength coach.
No, but I'm talking like beyond that. Like so like analysts and
they're not in that.
So they're not included.
No,
in
these
that.
are
Okay.
contracted coaches. Analysts are employees of the university.
Gotcha.
So
Gotcha.
Big difference. They are at-will employees as analysts and recruiting staffers. When they're terminated with 30, 60, or 90-day severances or whatever, or no severances. Where a contract coach, if they're fired, as long as it's not for cause, they're paid out an additional year. So a big difference. If you remember Bob Welton, guys, when he left Nebraska to go to Alabama, and he's still there, and Bob was a great guy. Got to know him a little bit during his short time here. He got a contract at Alabama, and that was one of the big reasons why he left. Not only did he get a pay bump, he got put on a contract, which when you're a coach, that gives you a lot of security.
Yeah, and those contracts, those numbers we'll know soon. But yeah, the staff's finalized. That's the news, and that's good. I mean, that's what is it, January 11th? That's due time. I mean, and now.
Hit the road Friday.
So, Sean, you're dialed into like coaching salary stuff like that. I don't even pretend to like know or and guess that sort of thing. What we on the chat, somebody asked that, like to break down your projected coaching salaries.
Hard to do.
Yeah, it's extremely hard to do. But what was your kind of rough estimate? Because I think I didn't even try to answer that because I just would have been throwing out random numbers.
I think you have to have different tiers. Like, do you just say $1.5 million each for Satterfield?
Yeah, that's
and
good.
Tony White.
Yeah, I mean that. Yeah,
between 1.2 and 1.5. You know, there's and to kind of put it in context, there's never been $1 million coach that's an assistant at Nebraska.
And there's going to be 2 now,
and there's going to be 2.
Times are changing,
and I don't believe there's ever been a $900,000 coach. I think the 800s had been the highest.
What was the most Chin made?
850.
Yeah, he wasn't
850?
800, 850. It was never nines.
Okay.
Tim Beck was in the eights, and that was a long time ago. So Tim Beck's pay back then was really high.
What was Sean? Do you remember Bob Diaco? Was that?
I can look it up.
Look that up real fast. It was in the 8s or 9s, right around that number as well.
I think you're right about Tony White and Marcus Satterfield.
1.2 to 1.5 range.
He made 825.
Diaco.
Ooh,
2017.
25. Okay.
Yep.
That was highly. He was highly paid.
Got to
for that.
pay for those nice suits and sweaters.
Yeah, he dressed really well. He really did.
I mean, his stuff was like custom made.
Yeah, he didn't. Yeah, he didn't wear like Levi's. I mean,
Remember at Oregon, like the first road game, we interviewed him after that loss, and I mean, it was like he was so dressed
Oregon.
up.
Yeah, he had a
He was
custom
like
tailored suit on
with a black shirt, like little handkerchief in his pocket.
Yeah,
I mean,
sweet.
he was so dressed up that it was like, oh my! I mean, like wow! Like
How'd you say you saw him at the pool wearing like white linen pants and like?
Yeah, he had linen on.
Well, my theory.
Linen.
The dude dude wears linen to the pool.
You never saw Bob Diaco in shorts.
Sweet. That's sweet.
You never saw Bob Diaco in shorts.
You
ever.
didn't?
Never.
Why is that?
You always saw him in high
I know why.
socks because he had an
Why?
Iowa Hawkeye tattoo on his leg.
He had the Hawkeye on his calf.
Oh boy,
And
Wasn't that the same thing with didn't Kaz have the same thing?
I don't know.
Well,
that.
Bob-
Because that's why
Stoops.
he always wore sweatpants.
Bob Stoops had one too.
Okay.
It was a big Iowa thing.
It's an Iowa thing. Bielema has one, I
Wait,
think.
Kaz had one?
I thought so.
Kaz played for Notre Dame though.
Oh,
Yeah, he
so
played for Notre
then
Dame.
it was Bielema. Bielema has one.
Yeah, there's no
Yeah, good job. Good call, Sean.
Kaz.
I knew it was one. Somebody else had one.
Yeah, it was a thing at Iowa. I think guys got those because Bob Stoops had. We remember Bob Bruce, our old colleague or friend that used to work with Kevin Kugler. We were at Big 12 Media Days one year, and this was like the early years of Bob Stoops at Oklahoma. I mean, because Bob was on that show a long time ago, and he tried to get Bob Stoops to show him the Hawkeye tattoo. And Bob was a wild card.
Did he really?
And Stoops would not have it.
He wouldn't.
No, he was like, no.
Was he? Did he have a sense of humor about it?
He's like, no, I'm good. I'm good.
Oh boy, that was probably awkward.
You can imagine Bob Stoops.
Yeah. Interesting.
But back to the coach salaries. Okay.
Yeah.
So we're thinking 1.2 to 1.5 on these coordinators.
I think so.
I think then you've got kind of another tier where I think there's going to be a lot of guys that are making like 500,000 or 600 in that 5-6 range.
Who's the highest profile non-coordinator? Yeah, who is that?
I'd like to say honestly Bob Wager, but he's never been a college coach at a D1 level.
Tight ends coach too, Sean. Not
No.
very high profile.
Bob Wager probably make like 400.
Yeah.
EJ Barthel probably like 500.
Jeez. With it, I mean he's a very young, inexperienced coach making 5.
Yeah, like
What about Cooper?
Yeah.
Evan Cooper might
I mean,
be.
he's
you're right.
Rule's right-hand man.
Yeah, he's going to be probably the highest paid non-coordinator.
Yeah,
if you'd wager.
He's happy right now. He's gonna make some money. He's gonna make more money.
They'll all be doing well.
Yeah.
Now the coordinators too will get 3-year contracts, which has never been done at Nebraska either before. Usually get 2. 2 is the business norm or the industry standard.
They're getting 3?
The coordinators will get 3-year deals.
That's notable.
So you're talking. You might have 3-year deals valued at $4 million a piece on these core. I mean,
It's a pretty good deal.
think about that.
I am right now. I'm thinking about Tony White right now. How at age 43, I mean, he just hit the lottery.
Well, he was making $780 or $7.
Pretty good.
Just going to double his salary. No
Yeah.
big deal.
Yeah, but he was the highest paid assistant ever at Syracuse. Okay, I mean
Now he's going to be the highest paid assistant maybe at Nebraska.
Well, and you can go like house shopping in Lincoln and not really worry if you have a 3-year deal. You're like, you know what, I could upgrade a little bit more than I thought I would for coaching because coaches are very careful. I think when they buy a home, I mean it's a cutthroat industry, but you get a 3-year deal, you can kind of settle in.
What do you think for Foley?
Yeah, Foley will make.
He's a
some money.
coordinator.
Okay, you're right. Yeah, Foley and Cooper probably the highest paid non-coordinators.
Highest profile too.
They're going to be a step up from the other guys. I would say Knighton and the running backs coach Barthel will be about the same, don't you think? And
I don't know. I can't say, but yeah,
I
probably.
wonder where Raiola is going to stack up.
Yeah.
will he kind
What
of because
was
he
he
was
making last
he
year?
wasn't making that much money last year. Raiola, he was lower.
Check that out,
400.
And I don't know how the fan base would react if he got a big raise. You know what I'm saying?
325,000.
He's low. That's low.
So would he get up to like 400 maybe? Would they bump him up?
Well, once again, what's that announcement? Well, you don't. Okay, I'll help out. I'll help my alma mater out here. If he gets a raise, don't announce it.
Well, you have to. The contract.
Just put it out.
The contract.
Well, yeah, but
public. They don't announce salaries.
Well, you know what? Yeah.
You have to ask.
How will the fan base react to that?
I don't know. If you put it in the context where like they're paying every coach more than they did before, like a raise
probably
is
okay.
like
You're right,
an
though,
assumed
Robin.
thing.
Foley and Cooper are going to be the highest.
Yeah, and Robin, you're right too. It's just sort of built into the discussion.
Just expect every member of the full-time staff is going to be making more than the previous full-time staff.
Yep,
It's going to be
It's the
interesting.
nature of the beast.
It's a good deal. It's
The
a good
portal has been active for Nebraska with adding new players. We're going to hit on that and the latest addition, Billy Kemp. Next, you're listening to the Husker Online Show.
You're listening to HuskerOnline.com, your authority on Nebraska athletics.
And we're back here on the Husker Online Show. Sean Callahan, Steve Sipple, Robin Washad, as we're talking transfer portal and just the impact it's had for Nebraska over the last few weeks with Matt Rule at show taping time. Nebraska with now 8 transfers in the boat for next year. Still nowhere near last year's 15 that they brought in. That were scholarship additions. I think there might have been even more than 50. There might have been one more. They had
16.
16. I wonder who the 16th is.
I don't know. Don't worry about it. 16, Sean. I know you've said 15. It's 15 or 16. That's the way.
Yeah, On Three's got it at 16.
So we're at 9 now. 9 now, right?
Yeah, 8.
Oh,
8. There's a chance for 9. But the big one, Nebraska adds an addition of Billy Kemp the fourth out of Virginia, and he is a guy that's not this past year because he battled an injury, but the previous 2 years he had nearly 100 targeted throws each of the last 2 seasons. That's more targets than Samori Torre got at Nebraska in 2021. It's slightly under the number of targets that Trey Palmer got this past year. So it puts in perspective, he's a high-volume pass catcher, and I think he's coming here, guys, to be number 1.
Yeah, and so you see him more as a slot guy, right? Like that's pretty
I'll break it down here in a
natural.
second.
Yeah, I know, Sep, you've
Get the grease sport out, Coach.
You've spent the long nights watching film on this guy, so I'll hand the mic over to you.
That's a good question. This is a very interesting conversation to me about Billy Kemp. Sean automatically puts the number 1 receiver tag on him. I guess Sean, do you just do that by default? Now, here's the thing. I don't know if he's that type of receiver. He's 5'9", 172. I have watched a lot of film on him, by the way. He's close. Virginia did split him wide. He wasn't always in the slot. He was in the slot, though, too. Here's the deal. They'd split him wide. They'd put him in the slot. Hell, they'd put him in the backfield, motion him out. That you can do a lot with him, but he's not a prototypical one because of his size.
Is he like a Wandale?
That's a good analogy. Well, and he's a punt returner.
He's not as good. He's one. Here's what I'd say about that. Wandale could play running back. Mm-hmm. I don't think you could put this guy at running back.
Okay.
All right. He's not that.
Didn't have that.
He's a little small.
But he can carry the ball out of the backfield, like in wrinkles.
Sipple, he had 74 catches in 2021 and 67 in 2020.
Here's the difference, though, Sean. You keep saying number 1, okay? Here's the difference. Samori Torre averages 19 yards a catch at Nebraska. Okay, 19 yards, 19.8. The guy that lists Trey Palmer this year averaged 14.8, 14.9. No, this guy, Kemp, 9.7 yards per catch. So it's different. It's a different conversation. He hasn't stretched the field like
Will he lead Nebraska in receptions?
Catches? Yeah.
You know what? Here's what I'd say. I think he could lead him in receptions, but will he lead him in reception yards?
Mm-hmm. Who will be? So you think Marcus Washington, Alante Brown, or Joshua Fleeks will have the most receiving yards? One of those 3 guys?
Could be Marcus Washington, or it could be somebody we don't know about.
Now, Marcus Washington had a record year last year in his career. He had 48 targets, 31 catches for 471. So he averaged 15.2 per catch last year.
I know what I'm doing if I'm Rule.
And we all know what the quarterback play was in several of those games there, too. So good numbers, good numbers.
Yeah, and by the way, Billy Kemp. Now, I'm coming across like I'm downplaying. He's good. I like him. I just don't know.
You're not ready to give him the Porsche,
right? And he benefited from Brennan Armstrong. Brennan Armstrong's a good quarterback who was throwing to him. Brennan Armstrong threw for a ton of yards. Yeah, I'm just not ready to give him portion. In fact, if I were Rule, what I would do is go try to find a 6'2", 6'3" Blazer that's a pure guy you split
Well, and
wide.
they tried that with Malik Hornsby, and they thought they had him. The Malik Hornsby, the Arkansas quarterback who –
That's a project, Sean. I want a guy who's in the Power 5 who's caught a bunch of passes. You see what I'm saying?
and those guys aren't out there, though.
Yeah, it's hard to find them.
I mean, Trey Palmer – who would have thunk that Trey Palmer could have had a year like he had? I mean,
I think Mickey did.
But his previous best year was 344 yards receiving.
I remember going into the year, there was talk, could he be a 1,000-yard receiver? And
Okay.
I think that
We said that.
we didn't rule it out by any stretch.
And now he's projected third-round pick.
Yep.
Guys, they're projecting him third-round pick. ESPN had that.
I mean,
story.
his only knock is the drops.
Yeah, and he's not very physical.
Like, he's had a lot of drops as a receiver. And the Illinois game, if you're going to, like, really dissect tape, just how he went away in that game.
They
and
roughed him up.
And even the Michigan game, but the Michigan game, like, you can't really.
Right.
I mean, the quarterback situation was a disaster.
The knock is the drops. The knock is also, Sean, he's not all that physical, and he'll have to be more physical. But, man, I mean, ESPN had him as the 10th rated wideout for the draft. Yeah, you're getting drafted pretty high at if you're the 10th rated wideout.
Absolutely.
Now, Brian Munson brought up a great point in his 3-and-out recruiting column just about Billy Kemp and Joshua Fleeks being both 6-year seniors and just how they're going to have two, grown men almost kind of in that room to help mature. And Marcus Washington is an older guy too, but, I mean, you're going to have 2 or 3 guys older than the coach.
Yeah, Kemp, here's the deal with Kemp. He plays that way too. He can do a lot. That's the thing about Kemp. He goes over the middle on 3rd and 7. You can go to him. In fact, Armstrong would lock in on him on 3rd and 7. They were locking in. So that kind of backs what you say, Sean. He could be a number 1. They you know what? He runs a jet sweep really well. He does that really well. He catches a screen pass really well and gets upfield. He's really versatile. He's really versatile.
They didn't really let him stretch the field at Virginia.
Not too much.
He played between the hashes.
Yeah,
mean,
they threw some over-the-shoulder stuff to him deep, but not a lot.
But yeah, he's walking into a great situation. I think that's the key. And
He is. He's going to catch a lot of passes.
like Robert and I had this debate, and to me, the X is Marcus Washington, the Z is Alante Brown, and the slot is Billy Kemp.
Yeah, Alante Brown and Kemp look a lot alike. That's the thing. I mean,
Well, the Z and the slot are different. I mean, and
they're different positions, but those guys are similar heights, kind of play the same. Kemp's probably faster than
You
Alante.
just got to wonder how interchangeable those spots are. I mean, like how mixing and matching is going to be done, with those spots, especially just hearing Marcus Satterfield talk about how, they move guys around all the time. Receivers are playing running back, and it will be out wide in the slot. So, I mean,
Yeah,
I don't pigeonhole guys into you are a Z,
Okay.
you're an X, you're a slot.
that's the wise thing to do.
Yeah.
To not do. You're right. And really, you can't do that with Billy Kemp. They move him all.
Exactly.
At least Virginia did. They moved him all over the place.
He's like a Wandell in that sense.
Yeah.
So it will be interesting just to see if they add any more receiver. And there's some other names that we don't talk about, like Janiron Bonner.
Yeah.
Where's he at?
Yeah. A good question.
Any of those freshmen coming in too.
Yeah. Who among those freshmen? You've mentioned Jaden Doss, Sean.
And Malachi Coleman.
Yeah.
Can they get him going? You got 4 games for some of these guys too. Are there opportunities to play some of these guys, to give them a little audition to see where they're
You
at,
start off at Minnesota.
and then Colorado?
Yeah. I mean, you know how it is with freshmen. I mean, you can do it. Some freshmen are ready for that. But, man, you're not easing into anything. Mm-mm. You're not easing into anything at Minnesota or Colorado.
Did you see Colorado was trying to play week 0 against Arizona State? I don't know if it's going to happen.
No, it got shut down because Dion leaked it to Herb Street, and I think Arizona State pulled out of it. That was the report as of Wednesday.
I don't understand why Arizona State would pull out of it. To me, it would be a humongous ratings game, like a huge ratings game for the Pac-12, where the conference would say, no, we're playing this game if we can get it.
And it was going to be at Arizona State, right? It was going to be a road game for Colorado.
I don't know how that week 0 stuff works, so I don't know if you can just get a waiver. I mean, I'd love to know what the waiver is. Are one of those teams playing Hawaii? Because as it stands right now, you have to play Hawaii to get a week 0 game, or have an FCS opponent or go overseas like Nebraska did at Ireland. They're going to change that, though. I think when the playoff expands, week 0 is going to be a part of the regular season where they're just going to call it week 1.
Yeah, might as well.
So back to Kemp, would you say there are 3 top portal guys right now? I don't know. I think you'd put Sims number 1, Scott number 2, and would you put Kemp number 3? Or like in terms of impact, potential impact.
Those are the top 3, and Elijah Judy's a wild card. I think he could play a lot of snaps.
What about the Chief Borders on the edge?
He's got an opportunity to play a lot of snaps. I mean, he just didn't do anything at Florida.
Right. What about Collier at safety?
Same thing. Didn't do anything at Florida. So it's really hard to know because we've kind of been there, done that with portal guys that have come in and not done much at School A. They don't. I mean, think of some. I'm not going to go through the names of guys, but think of some of the guys that came last year.
Yeah, they
didn't do anything at the previous school, and they. Trey Palmer at least did something at LSU. Like a few of the guys Nebraska had didn't do much at their previous school, and they didn't do anything at Nebraska. So it's going to be interesting just to see how it all comes together. The team reports back Sunday night.
Okay,
that's
info, Sean.
That's the meeting. They're going to have a meeting Sunday night and then get going. Now, classes don't begin until the following Monday, the 23rd.
Okay.
But the players get in and start reporting
Sunday
night.
Okay.
And I know in our chat there was some people that weren't familiar with the On3 transfer portal rankings. That's a relatively new feature that On3 just recently debuted, where before portal additions weren't factored into recruiting rankings. Well, now we have a separate portal team rankings, and Nebraska, with their 8 transfers in, 14 transfers out. They're at number 23 nationally, just behind Pitt at 22 and just ahead of Virginia Tech at 24.
Okay.
So, decent spot.
Yeah, 8 in and 14 out, and we're expecting probably maybe 9 in. Would that number go over 9 before January 18th when the portal shuts down?
I don't think so, unless there's somebody that we don't know about. And that's the hard thing. For our users and listeners, the transfer portal is locked up. I mean, you're not dealing with 16, 17-year-old kids here. I mean, a lot of times they're older players that are veterans and grown men.
They keep it on the down low.
Like Micah Mazuka. Everybody in the industry on all the networks, everybody thought Nebraska had the edge. The Florida guys did, and then he picks Florida. And people were pretty upset about it, but
we were. I mean, just so our people know, we were ready to roll.
We had everything set because the intel we had, and Omar Hales touting a commit Friday night, which we don't even know who that commit was now. I mean, because they didn't get.
Maybe they thought they had him.
Mazuka. Well, I think it was Hornsby.
Oh, Malik Hornsby.
So to kind of give you a little backstage pass how we operate. Like, we get ready for some of these, and our competition does the same thing too. Yeah. You did it at the Journal-Star for all your years.
Absolutely.
But, we had stories ready to go for Hornsby. Mm-hmm. We had stories ready to go for Mazuka.
Yeah. We were at the ready last
We had videos recorded. I mean, we had things ready to roll.
We thought this was happening.
So, we put a lot of time in. It's kind of been a grind, but we're almost there, boys.
Well, no, I know. I mean, even if the portal were open all year, it's not that bad. I mean, you're writing about guys that might come and might not. But anyway.
All right, when we come back, we're going to talk about some Nebraska basketball. By the way, the concession stand situation was much better. I'm going to hit on that.
It's probably the most positive update we'll have on there.
We'll hit on
Colby Ridge was operating at a high level.
They've been operating at a high level all year.
The popcorn was flowing.
The beer was flowing, though. And other than that, nothing else. But we'll hit on that next. You're listening to the HuskerOnline show.
You're listening to HuskerOnline.com, your authority on Nebraska athletics.
And welcome back here to the Husker Online Show. Sean Callahan, Steve Sipple, Robin Washett. Before we get into Nebraska basketball talk, this segment of the program brought to you by Tanner's Sports Bar and Grill, 30th and Yankee Hill Road. Get on in there, watch all of the NFL playoffs. I know nobody is a bigger fan of this time of the year than Robin Washett.
Love it. especially when the New York Football Giants are participating.
They are.
Yes, they are, Sip. 6th seed going to play the Minnesota Vikings.
Ooh, you got a shot there.
We do have a shot. We should have beat them in the regular season.
Where will you be watching that game?
By myself, without anyone else around me, because I don't need any outside distractions.
Can you work that?
I got to lock in.
Can you do that?
Well, I mean, my kids would probably bother me, but that's
no Tanners for you.
Can you tell your kids this is quiet time for Dad? Can you do that?
No. They have zero respect for that.
But get on into Tanner Sports Bar and Grill,
whomp 'em.
30th and Yankee.
Sorry, Sean.
30th and Yankee Hill Road.
Yeah, we just lost some sponsors there. That's
all
okay.
6 NFL playoff games on this weekend, and I love that. By the way,
What's that?
They expand the playoffs, but it's genius because you get 2 Saturday games,
Yep.
3 Sunday games, and a Monday night game.
Oh, it's a great time of
So
year.
you get a playoff game in every window, and you can watch them all. So it's getting no better place to go.
Rob, you'd be surprised. I'm not a huge NFL guy, but I lock in hard on these playoffs.
Love the playoffs.
Yeah, it's amazing.
Best time of the year.
All right, let's talk about the other best time of the year is basketball season for Robin Washett.
Oh, yeah.
Let's get into the details, Robin. 76-50. The highlight of the game was the concession stand situation.
Absolutely.
They brought it.
They did?
Oh, we'll get into the game here, but when you walked into the arena, they had a wristband station immediately. They had beer troughs around the arena. The ground level concession stand by the elevator or the escalators was open for the first time in years. The Valentino's full service stand was open for the first time since the 2019 basketball season. They had it all figured out, and it was the best I've seen it in years at PBA. So that was the good news. Let's get to the bad news, the game.
Yeah. I mean, where do you start? It was a disaster from the jump, and it was a game where you had a good crowd. Like, I thought that the fans were, it wasn't like sold out, but it was a good crowd.
It was 13,000 probably.
Yeah, and they were ready to, I mean, they kind of understood what that situation was. And then just the way the game started with all the whistles. I mean, 6 fouls in the first 4 minutes, 24 fouls combined in the first half. There was zero chance to establish any sort of flow or momentum. So every time Nebraska would make a run, there'd be followed by a whistle to take the air out of the arena. And that just kind of allowed the game to plod along until Illinois finally got going. I mean, they still only shot, 33% in the first half, but they had Terrence Shannon Jr. And that's kind of the difference right now, where Nebraska has to walk such a fine line. Everything needs to follow such a specific script on both ends of the floor for them to have a chance, especially in this conference, that when things don't go their way, when Derek Walker picks up 2 early fouls and plays 6 minutes in the first half, when they shoot 36% from the floor, they're missing free throws and doing all those things, they just, it's hard for them to recover, whereas Illinois was going through a lot of the same problems, but they had a star, and their star changed the game. He took the game over. 27 points, 11 rebounds, 4 assists, 4 steals in 35 minutes. I mean, that was the difference for me. That's what changed the game, and Nebraska just didn't have the firepower anywhere close to it to respond and keep up.
Terrence Shannon. I mean, it's not like he's done this all year. He's been good, but not 27 points good. Now, Rob, you think he's an NBA player. I think he might be right. Very left-hand dominated, drove the basket really well, hit a couple threes. He had a lot of bounce last night. I mean, he was driving by guys a little too easily.
Well, when Emmanuel Bandamel struggles to stay in front of a guy, that's telling to me.
Yep.
He's as good of an on-ball defender as there is in the conference.
He was getting around
and
Bandamel.
Terrence Shannon was blown by him.
Yeah, Shannon was good last night, but Illinois was now listen, this is what's interesting. Illinois comes in, beats Nebraska by 26. This is an Illinois team that was 4-4 in their last 8. It's not like Illinois is tearing it up. They're 1-3 in the league.
They have talent, though.
They do. I don't want to oversell them, though.
They've underperformed. I mean, compare where they were when they got blown out by Missouri.
Well, I will say this, Rob. I like this Illinois team better than last year's. I do.
They're so different without Kofi
Way different.
in there. I mean, that's the difference. Half their shots are three-pointers, so they're a much more guard-heavy team than they've ever been. And, I think Nebraska got in a situation where they get into this habit defensively where they overcommit to defending the paint so hard to where whenever the ball touches the paint, guys double in to help. And that leaves players wide open in the corner on the perimeter. And they were really struggling to get back out and contest three-point shots, and Illinois was getting wide open looks.
Well, here's the deal, Rob.
That's happened a lot this year.
Here's the deal, Rob. Illinois their ball movement was excellent, and I thought they were making really decisive moves to the basket. So couple those two things: really good ball movement and decisive moves to the basket. Their offense it looked pretty good last night, Illinois.
Well, and I was watching, on social media, the Illinois writers. They were saying the same thing. Like the ball was popping better than it had been in a long time.
I'm not surprised by that.
And so, not only were they getting looks from 3-point range, but because Nebraska was crashing so hard to make up for, being late on their closeouts, they were overcommitting to stop the shot, pump fake, boom, there's a drive to the lane.
You saw that.
And that's what Terrence Shannon was just feasting on.
Yeah. So Nebraska's record now
9-8 or 8-7.
9-8.
9-8.
9-8.
And they go to
2-4
in a Friday night special at Purdue.
Yeah.
And a year ago, the same game was on a Friday night.
It's
at
the hardest
Purdue.
place to play in the Big Ten. I don't care what anybody says. Mackey Arena is the most difficult.
What was that
place
game
to
like?
play.
20. It was like 20-point deficit in the first 10 minutes last year.
Well, and then Derek
24
Walker
to
got early fouls, and the only chance they had was for Walker to stay in the game. The refs took him out within the first 4 to 6 minutes, and it was over. Everybody knew it was over at the first media timeout.
That spread will be like 14.
Oh, I mean, yeah, maybe to play it safe.
But Nebraska pushed them to overtime.
Yeah, and so that's
Right.
even more incentive.
They're not going to take Nebraska.
Purdue will
lightly.
not. It's a Friday night in Mackey Arena. Purdue's rolling. They're third-ranked team in the nation, and they're playing a team that almost beat them. Should have beat them. So they're going to have their full attention.
I've told Robin this. I'm a huge fan of the Friday night Big Ten basketball game in January and February.
Yeah.
Not in November, December necessarily, but January, February when
pretty cool.
It's fun.
Yeah, I
And
like it.
I wish we don't have any at home this year, do we, Robin? Friday night games.
No.
So after Purdue, they get, is it Ohio State at home after that?
Yes.
And then it's at Penn State.
Penn State,
And then
Northwestern at home,
at Maryland.
at Maryland, at Illinois, Penn State at home, at Michigan.
It's relentless.
But then you start that final stretch
Tails
where
off.
you have 4 of your final 5 or 4 of your final 6 at home. So the key from this point on is figuring out some way to keep your head above water going into February.
Without maybe, now where are we at with Rashawn Gary?
Juwan Gary.
Juwan Gary.
Yeah, that's to be determined. So last night, Fred
Can
didn't
you edit
seem.
that, Sean?
Yeah,
Right.
Rashawn Gary, he's a DN for the Packers, right? So anyway,
Gary.
Fred was not optimistic. He didn't seem very positive about it, where he's like, we're going to do further evaluation. We should know by the end of the week. But right now, for Purdue, I would say questionable at best. That's a big deal. He's their emotional spark plug.
Big deal.
All right, get on to Tanner's, by the way. 6 o'clock game Friday. They'll have it on there as well. Nebraska at Purdue, and then they don't play again until Wednesday, 6 o'clock in Lincoln against Ohio State at PBA. So great opportunity to get in and see the Huskers next week on Wednesday night. When we come back, we're going to take questions in the mailbag. You're listening to the Husker Online Show.
This is HuskerOnline.com, your authority on Nebraska athletics.
And we're back here on the Husker Online Show. Sean Callahan, Robin Washett, Steve Sipple. Let's bring in Abby Barmore now. Abby, trying to take some questions in the mailbag. It looked like there were a lot this week. What do you got to start us out with?
We talked a lot about earlier in the show about the wide receiver depth, but what about the running back depth?
Oh,
what do you
God.
think that's going to be?
Good. They got a good running back room. So what is? I'd say number one, either A.J. Allen or Anthony Grant.
Those two guys, you need two. You can't just have one.
Okay. 2, 3, Gabe Irvin. 4, Ramir Johnson. You're in pretty good shape right there, right?
Quentin Ives comes in as a freshman
Okay.
as well.
What about Emmett Johnson?
Like him. I think he could be sneaky good, Rob. I'm glad you mentioned him.
What kind of reps will he get is the
Yeah, I
question.
know.
That's the question.
It's a loaded room.
It's loaded
Just got to
room.
wonder what the opportunity is going to be.
Glad you brought him up, though. He was a good player in Minneapolis, tough kid. He signed in the same class as A.J. Allen, so A.J. Allen overshadowed him by a long ways. But, that room, man, that's a good room.
There's someone in the chat that brought up the point, like, could a guy like Gabe Urban play linebacker if, make a Cody Glenn type move? And I just don't know.
running back.
It's almost insulting to even like.
He's a good running back.
I mean, he started as a true freshman. He's the first true freshman in program history to start a season opener. And then he got hurt. So
He might be the fastest of those guys.
If he doesn't play running back here, he's going to play running back somewhere else. He's not going to play the linebacker.
Now, hold on. I'm telling you, he might be the fastest of those guys, and I count Ramir in that. I mean, one of those guys last summer, Sean told me it was one of the guys was telling him it was a safety. Miles Farmer, I think, told me that Gabe Irvin outruns Ramir. So Irvin can fly. I mean, and he's big. You know, he's faster than Ramir at 6'1", 215. Sorry.
While slowing down the offense and using the fullback sounds good in theory, can it be effective in today's college football game?
Is the fullback talk all just kind of red meat, or do you buy into like we're going to see like 20 plays a game with a fullback?
I don't know about 20. And I also don't think there's going to be like an exclusive fullback on the roster. Maybe there is, but like I think there'll be elements of fullback where you have like the tight end motioning into fullback to be that lead blocker, or you have a two-back set where, you know, maybe a bigger back is lined up ahead. But like this isn't going to be like Makovica paving the way for Amon Green. Like this is, you know, there's going to be a fullback element. I mean, there still is, and especially in a pro-style offense, but I don't see this being like the new direction Matt Rule and Satterfield are taking this thing to get back to the glory days of smash mouth football.
I don't know. Satterfield, Marcus, the other day on Friday, I thought he was pretty genuine in talking about it. Now, what's the context in his mind versus how we know the fullback? I don't know that.
Right.
But he seemed pretty knowledgeable about Nebraska football history. So, I don't know. I mean, Wisconsin uses a fullback regularly. They employ a fullback. You know, they have a two deep with fullbacks on it. Could it be something like that? I don't know.
With fullback recruiting, you have to develop and project now. There aren't ready-to-go fullbacks in high school that play the position anymore. I mean, it's not really a position that you see on high school fields anymore, where like when we were growing up in high school in the 80s and 90s in Nebraska, every school had a fullback, and you knew the guy. You're like, yeah, that guy's – I mean, you –
just put your most meathead dude at fullback and
just wear a permanent
let
neck
him go
roll
knock some heads
in the hallways. And I mean, yeah, fullback was a big deal like in the 80s and 90s and early 2000s in Nebraska high school football. And
pretty like my brother-in-law played fullback at Milford, you know, and like he, you know, and he like led the team in rushing. I mean, like that's back when like, you know, that was a part of high school football.
Cool.
Any chance the Huskers go after a second portal quarterback?
I don't think so. I mean, a lot would have to happen, but I think you really complicate things. Number one, you got Jeff Sims. Number two, you got Casey Thompson, who doesn't appear to be going anywhere. So you got enough there. Logan Smother. There's currently 4 quarterbacks, guys, on this roster that have started a Power 5 football game. Phew.
Okay.
How many teams in college football could say that?
So what would have to happen is, okay, they have 6 scholarship quarterbacks right now.
Richard Torres and Heinrich Harburg, the other 2.
Right. So somebody would have to matriculate in the spring.
6 is already too many.
Yeah,
right.
Way too many.
So if 3 leave, then yeah, you might have to add somebody. This would be in the spring. And when's the second portal period?
May 1
to 15th.
Yep.
May 1 to 15th. So there's things that can happen before May 1. Well, spring football is going to happen before that portal period.
And
so
May 1's a Monday.
So you never know. I mean, there could be some guys that leave, which would necessitate you having to bring in another one.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, but right now, as it stands, there's zero need for any more additions in that room.
And by the way, there's a quarterback by the name of Dylan Raiola for 2024.
Yeah, exactly.
Haven't heard of him.
Never heard of him.
Nope.
And I know all the hubbub about Georgia, and Sipple will have more of that in Tunnel Talk on Friday. We won't give too much away, but Nebraska is still in it with Dylan Raiola too. I mean, like
they're in it.
They're in it.
They're in it. I'd put Georgia as a favorite, but they're in it.
All right, Ab, what's next?
What position group on offense and on defense are you most excited for next season?
Position group on offense.
Well, running back on offense. You could say quarterback, but I'd say running back on offense because of what we said. What would you say on defense? I like those corners. I like Newsom and Hartzog.
Safety. I put safety in there. I think that might be the deepest position on the defense.
I mean, there's concerns about like the beef of the front.
Oh, yeah.
Big concerns.
I'd say front six now we're calling it. Right, 3-3-5.
Thanks, Coach.
But yeah, the front I'd say is a concern right now for sure.
Yeah.
Depth and just playmaking ability, both you wonder about. Losing those guys on the edge, Garrett Nelson, O'Shawn Mathis, and Caleb Tanner, those are huge hits. Huge hits.
Yeah, if Garrett Nelson would have returned, changes a lot of things.
Changed a lot of things. Colton Feist's return would have changed a lot.
Yeah, Colton Feist leaving, it's a bigger blow than a lot of people want to give it credit for.
Oh, you had the Pro Football Focus stat in here. Wasn't he their best run stopping big man?
On the whole defense.
Oh, on the whole defense.
Wow.
He graded best against the run on the whole defense.
And I mean, look, is he a high-profile, major Big Ten defensive lineman? No, but he's a damn good role player.
Mm-hmm.
And you need those. You need. And did I cuss? I shouldn't have probably cussed.
You can say damn.
I can say okay.
Yeah, why not?
Damn.
But he, I think he was a good player. I really do.
Oh, I do too.
Yeah, especially for what his role was. I don't know what more you would want out of that position. He was just the run-stopping, line-clogging defensive lineman that would make an occasional play, but he was consistent. You knew what you were getting out of him.
Yeah. Put it this way: they got a lot more out of him than Stephon Wynn, and who was the guy from Texas Tech they brought
Devin
in?
Drew.
Devin Drew. They got a lot more out of Colton Feets last year than those two guys.
Yeah, more.
And they probably had to pay a lot more money to get those two defensive linemen out of the portal.
Mm-hmm.
Yep.
So, yeah, there you go. Thank you.
Okay, on Monday, Georgia became one of the few teams to win back-to-back national championships. On Red Sea Scrolls, they were talking about, is 2022 Georgia better than 1995 Nebraska? What do you think?
It's so hard, guys, because we're getting so separated in eras with development and body types offensive styles and coaching. And I mean, we're getting to the point now where you're trying to compare like a 1970s team to a 1990s team.
Exactly.
It's a huge gap. But they're in the conversation as one of the more dominant ones. I still think 2019 LSU has to be up there now. When you look at the receivers in the NFL,
that would be a better conversation because I agree with you. You're too far removed from the 90s to start comparing teams from the 2020s. It's a different game. It's a different athlete.
I'm not totally in agreement with that. I think that.
I guess you would know better than I would.
I think that 95 team it was right on. I mean, right with Georgia, if not a little better defensively. That 95 team was really deep defensively. Not that I mean Georgia is too. Now Georgia's where the comparison gets difficult is Georgia's very balanced offensively. That's what they do. Nebraska didn't try to be balanced offensively. They're just going to hammer it at you. So. I'll ask you this. Did Georgia have a running back like Lawrence Phillips? And I will answer the question. No, they don't. They don't have
with Amon Green as a backup.
Yeah, they didn't have that. Mm-hmm. I mean, I'll take Tommy over Stetson Bennett. I mean, Tommy's the best option quarterback to ever play.
That's why I think 2019 LSU is better.
Better than who?
Those two teams.
Justin
Jefferson, Jamar Chase.
LSU didn't have that kind of defense.
LSU went undefeated?
I know. They didn't have the Nebraska defense, though. No. Look back at how many of those guys for Nebraska got drafted. I mean, I think you can get
how
to.
many guys got drafted off the LSU team?
I'm talking defense. 17. I think the number was 17 guys got drafted from Nebraska. You can't find 17 on that LSU defense that got drafted. No way.
What about Miami 01?
That might be the best. I can't. I just don't.
If you're doing off draft picks, there's no better team.
Right. I take Miami over just about anybody.
I was listening to an 02 Ohio State player talking about their win over Miami, and he's like, but that was the advantage back then. We had like 50 days to get ready for that game, and we put an entire new defense in that they weren't ready for.
Yeah.
And it got just enough pressure on Ken Dorsey, to disrupt him. And you could do that back then because you just had a one-game deal. But a playoff, I think, really makes it hard for the underdog to win the whole thing. Mm-hmm. Because by game 2 and now game 3 or even a game 4 with this new playoff we're going to, you can't just fluke your way or scheme your way to a championship.
Nope.
I mean, you could do it in a one-game thing.
Yeah, in a one-gamer, with all that time to prepare.
But in a 2 or 3 or 4 game deal,
hard to do.
Talent wins. Talent wins.
That's a great point.
Sip, right now, 95 Nebraska in their peak form, plays 2022 Georgia in their peak form. Where are you setting the point spread?
I'd say Nebraska's a 3-point favorite.
3-point favorite. Neutral site.
3-point favorite.
All right.
Yeah, the more I think about it, the more I like Nebraska in that matchup.
What about 19 LSU?
I like Nebraska in that matchup. Yeah, I do.
0-1 Miami?
That team was freaky, that Miami team. So was Nebraska. 95 Nebraska.
Our good friend Kyle Cole Morgan said after about a series or two, like some of the guys walked back to the sidelines in that Miami game in the Rose Bowl, and they were like, wow, we have no chance.
Yep.
I just know this. I was writing at halftime, and I never even thought about looking up. I didn't need to. Game was over. I didn't see the second half. To this day, I have no idea what happened in the second half.
And there were like 70,000 Nebraska fans there.
It was beautiful. It was a beautiful scene. I mean, that Rose Bowl is everything you hear about. It's gorgeous. That night was gorgeous. It was a beautiful sunset, but now the game wasn't much.
Final question.
If you could travel anywhere on Earth free of cost, where would you go?
Anywhere on Earth. I will go to Chile.
Okay.
Because I've seen pictures of it. It looks like Patagonia area. It looks incredible. Looks like a different planet.
Sipple's going to go to Shreveport.
And it's funny because of RSS. If I can like voluntarily go to Chile, it's pretty funny.
If you get banned on the message boards and disappear like some of our
Yeah.
users have over the years, they're in Chile.
The code is you got sent to Chile.
Oh, you got sent to Chile. You could go to a lot worse places.
Gosh, I have to really think about this. I don't know where
I don't even
wanna
know where
go.
that started. That's been going on for 15 years.
Anywhere you want.
I'd go to Croatia. I've got some Croatian
Croatia.
blood in me, and it's a beautiful country.
It is. It's like a vacation hub of Eastern Europe.
Really?
Yeah. They got like gorgeous lakes
I
and
thought
stuff
they
like that.
sent people to Croatia.
So I'm
Prison
I'm
camps.
Irish, obviously Callahan, but my other family side is Croatian.
Okay.
Like the neighborhood I grew up in South Omaha was the Croatian
Sip
neighborhood.
would go to Lubbock.
So that would be, I mean, going to Ireland with you guys was a highlight.
Yeah, that was fun.
Yeah, Ireland was sweet.
Fun. If I had to pick anywhere, somewhere in South America, somewhere warm.
I thought you were going to say like Tijuana,
No, done that. One time's enough.
Shreveport.
Somewhere South America, somewhere like that
Australia too.
would
Like,
be good. Beach.
like the New Zealand area.
Yeah.
I mean, like, just if you've ever seen Lord of the Rings, like that entire movie was shot in New Zealand.
Is that right?
Yes. So, like, just think of that landscape. Who wouldn't want to see that?
Like, would you want to go to Cuba?
No.
Yeah, I would.
Isn't it oppressive?
Yeah, it's pretty. I mean,
My dad went there recently. He said he loved it.
Really? I hope I haven't offended half the world at this point.
So far, you hate Croatia and you hate Cuba.
Yeah, Sean, I didn't mean to offend your ancestry there. It's fine.
we just need to go back to Ireland again.
Wasn't that something?
Find our. I was thinking about our driver Ed.
He was great.
Ed Major Column.
Yeah, Ed was incredible how much he knew. He was a fountain of information, and he was very tolerant and affable.
That day one was amazing in Ireland.
Yeah. Isn't it bizarre that we went to Ireland? I mean, everything moves way too fast.
I know. Just imagine what's happened since we were riding around with Ed in that van.
Yeah. Think about it.
And we had to give those nutrition staff guys a ride back.
The Nebraska nutrition staff
They got stranded at the stadium.
at Aviva.
and
at the stadium.
Ed gave them a ride.
Good old Ed.
All right. When we come back, we will close the show with some new rules and national talk next. You're listening to the Husker Online Show.
This is HuskerOnline.com, your authority on Nebraska athletics.
Final segment here of the Husker Online Show. Sean Callahan, Steve Sipple, Robin Washett, as we bring you here through the month of January as we let off the show. All 10 coaches hired. They'll be on the road Friday recruiting for Nebraska. Also going on right now, guys, the NCAA Rules Convention in San Antonio. A few new changes have been implemented already out of the convention. One, and it was always kind of a silly rule, you can have all these analysts that you can pay whatever you want to be on your staff, but they're not allowed to be on the grass coaching technically. But we know that was obviously not the case at most places. Analysts were heavily involved in a lot of different places over the years coaching. Now the new rule is going to allow analysts to coach during the practice week.
They call it the Frost Rule.
And this was, this was something that like literally,
Many people are calling it that, yes.
I mean,
Yes.
it was the Rich Rodriguez. I mean, basically, if your AD doesn't want you there, like they drum this charge up on you. Like,
Right. That's effectively what was happening before it.
At a lot of places. I mean, if your AD and your people want to make life hell on you, they would drum up this rule where your analysts are coaching.
It's preposterous in a lot of ways. Now, the anti-Frost folks will say, well, he was breaking the rules. So, yeah, all right, I guess.
But just think about the effort we put into covering that. And, Trev Alberts came to practice and spoke at a press conference about this, and now it's nothing.
Right, exactly. Now it's okay to do it. Yeah, it was sort of presented as a scandal, and now it's right?
It was a level 2 violation.
Yeah, but it was like anything around here, it gets way blown out of proportion, and it was blown way out of proportion, and now it's allowed.
Allowed. So
It's super funny in a way.
So if
and
Scott,
super pathetic in another.
if Scott Frost gets another job, I would venture to guess the show cause on him would be over.
That's a good question.
And I don't know the answer to that. I don't know if
Because
anybody
he still broke the rule when it was in effect.
but would they? I mean, I would say
I don't know if it'd be overshot.
that'd be interesting. But he'd just be a coordinator.
Yeah.
Well, Jim Harbaugh did the same thing, right? Like that's what this new round of investigations all about with him. So I mean, it's literally the exact same thing.
He never did his 1 week either. That was the big penalty, right? He was going to have to leave the
Frost?
leave the facility for a week, and it had to be like a Monday through Friday where you could not be up there. So, all right, the other rule change they're talking about, it's not official yet, is the calendar in recruiting, and you kind of look at just how things have gone this past year, especially with the transfer portal opening on December 5th, coaches going on the road to recruit, the signing day. There was 45 days of the portal, coaches on the road at the early signing day on December 21st. I mean, there was so much there.
Some coaches getting ready for bowl games.
Getting ready for bowl games.
Think about that.
It caused an immense amount of stress everywhere in
a
college
lot.
football to manage the portal, to manage a bowl game, to manage a roster, to manage coaching changes, coaching hires, all these different things. There's some talk. Can you move the signing day
To when?
Before the portal opens?
So before December 5th.
Right. The only thing in
How do you do that? Because there's games still being played.
Yeah. What's his name?
I think the real question I have is you eliminate the senior year of kids. If you push up signing day to August, let's say, then like what does that do to kids because we all know a guy that we grew up with in high school that wasn't that good as a junior and became like an all-state type guy as a senior. Those kids are going to really be penalized
If you move the signing date to when?
to like August or something.
Kids would be signing before their senior year?
Right.
Yeah, that's not. That doesn't seem like
I mean, could you just move it back to like what it used to be, February,
yeah, mid-February.
and just have one?
Just eliminate the early signing day altogether.
and just but
Jeez.
the problem. Okay, then here it goes back to the old problem.
What?
Then you have to kind of babysit your commits all the way to February. So if you have 20 some commits, you've got to visit each one of them almost every week just to make sure new coaching staffs that get hired aren't coming in to try to take your commits. Because that was the problem for Nebraska back in the day when like an Arkansas or an Auburn or somebody would hire a new coach in that January month where it was just like a lot of time, they would go in to like, if you had there was a receiver in Orlando that was committed to Rich Fisher and Bo Pelini, and I remember Greg and I during that bowl game, one of those bowl trips in Orlando, like we went to his house and interviewed him. Well, then he switched to Auburn because the new Auburn staff, convinced him in January to switch. So that's why the early signing day came around, was to eliminate January where it turned into kind of a poaching game.
Yeah. No answers here.
There are no
easy answers.
I don't think there is an easy solution with signing day in the portal other than the Bo Pelini rule. Bo Pelini just said, I want to go to a deal where when you make an offer, you have the ability to sign at any moment.
Yeah.
So a kid can commit and sign. That's how to do it.
Yeah.
Why does there need to be a specific day or window for that to happen?
Why is that? Yeah. Why is it? Why does there have to be?
But then NIL would become a problem at that point, because then you could tie lots of money and say like the collective will pay you this much if you sign now. If you wait, that money's gone. Then the collective stuff becomes bigger.
I don't know if that's an issue.
Yeah.
It's already kind of happening anyway to an extent. It's not supposed to, but it is. But yeah, the Pelini rule, people kind of like scoffed at it.
Yeah.
But it had a lot of thought to it.
That's his idea was a player when upon commitment will sign or
at least have the option to.
Yeah.
Like it shouldn't be a requirement.
Well, that's the question. Why?
I don't know. Because if you're a recruit, I mean, I think you should have, if you want to end your recruiting process, you should be able to do so. But if not, then you want to let things play out. I guess then the solution would be don't commit. But
right. I think Bo, if he was here, would say, no, my intent is that he has to sign at that point. If he commits, he has to
And it would
sign.
eliminate the non-committable offers too.
right.
Like you could only offer somebody if they could sign. Or now, like you can offer.
You're not
people,
offering 150 kids if they can all sign.
Pelini's idea was pretty good. I mean, I think Greg Sankey might agree, the SEC commissioner who sounded off about the stress that the current setup, the current apparatus is putting on coaches. It's enormous stress. Now we're not even familiar with this apparatus during a Nebraska period where they're getting ready for a bowl game. Now think about these coaches handling all this, the current setup, and getting ready to play a
playing
major
like
bowl
December 27th in Phoenix.
Think about that. It's a ton.
Well, and players leaving your roster. Oh, and the other new rule they're going to put in, or trying to, is redshirt freshmen, or the true freshmen they're going to redshirt. They can play in bowl games, and it won't count towards their 4 games.
Oh.
Because of the roster issues it's caused with the portal.
Sit-outs and whatnot.
Because you might have look at Florida. Like Florida had all those guys go in the portal before their bowl game.
Yeah.
And they got their teeth kicked in by Oregon State.
Well, you know what all this when we talk about all this stuff, it just reveals sort of the flaws of college football.
There are many.
Yeah. How we got to this, I sometimes wonder. It wasn't this complicated in 1985. It was not.
And every player thinks they're going to make the NFL, or a lot of these guys do, and it causes transferring and it causes opt-outs. And
Opt-outs.
The bowl games will never be. I think the playoff, though, going to 12 will help the bowl games a lot, because the top 12 teams are going to have all their best players playing in bowl games.
Mm-hmm. It's the other bowl games.
But
virtually become. They're rendered.
Spring
I hate to
games.
say this, like useless. I hate to say it because I'm a bowl person. But man, if you're not in the 12-teamer,
Wisconsin played Oklahoma State. Luke Fickell coached that game, which is still bizarre to me. Mm-hmm. But both teams had like quarterbacks that will never ever see the field again starting the game. Mm-hmm. I mean, it would be like Nebraska starting like Matt Masker in a bowl game.
There were a lot of bowl games like that. And then the Sugar Bowl, though, was Alabama. Nobody opted out. Kansas State didn't have opt-outs.
That speaks to the culture of those programs.
It really does. I don't think Kansas State had any opt-outs. They might have.
Because think about last year, Michigan State, Kenneth Walker opted out of the Sugar Bowl, and Kenny Pickett opted out of the Sugar Bowl.
Yeah.
Changed the whole Sugar Bowl.
It did. This year, the Sugar Bowl.
Or was it the Peach Bowl those teams played in?
One of those. Alabama. But this year, out in the Sugar Bowl, Alabama was intact.
And so is K-State. Deuce Vaughn played. He declared.
Yeah.
And I think we're just not seeing that as much as we used to.
Right.
Like if Nebraska would have played in a bowl game this year,
okay,
Trey Palmer wouldn't have played.
Probably not.
Garrett Nelson.
I don't know. I don't want to go through and speculate on each guy, but
I don't think Trey Palmer would have played.
Trey Palmer, well, he declared for the NFL like the day after the regular season.
Like minutes after College Game Day when Matt Rule was interviewed on FaceTime.
That's when
portrait mode FaceTime. Remember that interview?
Yeah.
I do remember that interview.
Was that portrait mode FaceTime?
Yeah, he had like the...
Was it really?
He was on a beach.
That's what that was?
It was like it had like that, you know how a portrait mode has like that kind of like...
It blurs the background.
Blurs the background image.
Oh, wow. I didn't realize that. That's interesting. And then Trey Palmer announced his intentions that day, right?
Yes.
So you're probably right. You wouldn't have had him.
Drove back from Iowa that night to get home. That was a long night, early morning.
Going back to the Bo Pelini rule, or the idea that we talked about, you know who else is in favor of that? Dave Doran.
Is that right?
Yep. He's one of the guys that has been, according to the story on ESPN that I'm reading, he's one of several coaches in favor of an open signing period where they can sign at any time as long as the school stays under a cap of 85 scholarships. So apparently that's not just some crazy Bo Pelini idea. Like there's several quote unquote other coaches on board with that.
All right. Well, lots to follow, lots to keep up on. Transfer portal news. The portal closes on Monday. Husker basketball Friday night. Make sure you are on HuskerOnline.com. We will keep you up to date with the latest.
Thanks again for joining us this week on Husker Online, your authority on Nebraska athletics.